Okay, so you're feeling stuck in a rut. You feel like you're always playing the same lines. You're looking for new strategies, new approaches to come up with like innovative bass lines. And so I got something for you that I think is interesting, and it has to do with playing around with the chord extensions. Okay, and isolating like the nested chords that live inside these bigger chords, and honing in on those sounds, those personalities within the chords, um, and using those as a way of like removing. This is kind of like a subtractive type of approach, okay? And I'll get back to that in a second. So let me talk first a little bit for those of you who don't know what extensions are. The extensions are those chord tones that live above the 5, the 5th degree. So your chords, if I'm playing in G major here, if I play a G major, I've got the root, the 3, the 5. Well, my first extension is that major 7, root. So that's a G major 7. That's an extension above that bass chord, okay? We can go to the 9th, we can go to the 11th, we can go to the 13th, and then ultimately we end up back at the root. But if we play through all of the chord tones, we end up playing a 7. We end up playing a 7-note chord. It's pretty rich. When you're playing on the piano and stuff, it's easier to get away with this because we got 10 fingers. And I doubt there's a lot of like piano players who would actually like play that. In a lot of cases, the challenge is we're looking for ways of like, selecting a subset of chord tones and focusing our ideas around that. It's sort of like, putting sometimes when you put barriers around things, it can stimulate creativity. At least for me, it does. So let's talk about how we can access these nested chords inside these bigger chords. Okay, and so the way that we do that, let's stay in G major here, just for conceptual reasons. We've got this, G major chord, right? Root 3, 5. Well, if we play the 3, the 5, and the 7, and sort of play it in isolation, we see we have a minor. It's a minor triad. In and of itself, that 3, 5, 7 is a minor triad. As a whole, it's a major 7 chord. So there's really like kind of like two sounds, two personalities in that major 7 chord. So one of the ideas we can do is, let's say we're playing in G major 7. Well, a lot of you may have this habit where you're like, okay, well, I'm playing G major 7, gotta play the root, and I better get that 3 in there. And I'm obviously making some assumptions based on my own experiences, but you don't have to play the root. You could, if you could get away with playing a B minor, just a B minor chord, and it will support, because it's related obviously to this. It's a nested chord within. It's just a subset of the chord tones. I've just omitted the root, and people do this all the time. People do this all the time. Bass players, we don't tend to do this. We feel like there's such a draw to that root, but that's an example of how we might say, okay, well, that's a way I might play G major 7. Is just like play just the 3, the 5, and the 7, and just leave the root out. Okay. you know, I do this all the time. I'm very much I tend to stay in the lower regions of the chords I'm playing in. I like the threes and the fives and the twos, and I tend to stay around. I tend to play a lot of my bass lines in and around that root. Um, you can kind of get. I find you can get a lot of color just in a small region there. But let's take this idea further, and let's take a nine chord. Let's take a let's do let's take that G major 7 up to a 9. So now we've got 1, 2, 3. There's this first triad chord. We've got the second, right, which is that B minor. And then we have this D major. So we've kind of got like three nested chords inside that 9 chord. If we go up to the 11, I think you'll see we get even more, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you get that diminished sound, right? You get the 7, 9, 11. Now, typically, just in this case here, normally if you're moving into the extensions of like a major 7 chord, or major chord for that matter, a 1 chord, if you will, generally speaking, we avoid the 4. It's considered sort of an avoid note. You may have heard that before. So a lot of times what will happen is that they'll raise the 11, right? You get this kind of like, more of like a major 11 chord based off of like a Lydian, right? That 4 is unstable. It doesn't like to be situated beside that 3. Anyways, I'm digressing a little bit here. But what I want you to take away from this, what's really important about this idea that I'm trying to get across here, is that in these larger chords, in these like deeper chords where we're moving into the extension territories, there's these like little personalities, these little chord personalities that live as like children to that parent chord, and we can use those as a mechanism to strip away and subtract a lot of notes and still be in that key, still not that key, sorry, but that still be supportive of that sound, right? And so this is what I want to talk about is some ways that we can like put a different lens on like the way we might approach a bass line. So let's look at a couple. Let's look at ways that we can use that 9, like a major 9 extension, to build a bass line, and strip away some of these other notes. So let's take that D, take this D major. So triads per se are they stick together, like they're easy for our ears to hear that. When we start playing, they have like they're cohesive. Those notes, they stick together. So when we play them together, when we I'm playing this D major, I could start taking that idea and saying, I'm just going to use that D major child chord as like a focal point to color this G sound. It sounds like, notice I'm not playing, you know, other notes. I could go, it sounds like two chords, but really I can do all of that and be, you know, playing basically a G major 9. Sorry, my screen went blank there. But this idea of being able to say, "Oh, okay, I want to leverage that sound, that major sound on that D," you know, as part of the sound. You know, and of course I can invert. You know, I can just take those notes, those 4 notes, the 3 from the triad and the root, and start focusing a bass line just on that. So you're probably thinking, well, that's just, you know, it's just all G major. Yeah, it is all G major. But notice I'm emphasizing that sound in D. It's very, it sounds like, am I in D or am I in G? And depending on where I put the extensions, notice I put this 9, I dropped it into the 2 position. You know, we can do that, and I do that on bass all the time, where, you know, I'll take the extension notes and bring them close to the lowest parts, and you know, maybe sometimes bring the bass chord notes up into the extension territories. So you can kind of flip and voice these around however you want, but they can start to subtract, like, you know, an abundance of notes. You know, instead of looking at this as, you know, a 9 chord with 5 tones to work with, and I've stripped away at least one of them. And in this case, I've stripped away the 3. And maybe those bass lines don't sound very, you know, interesting or innovative. You know, I'm just trying to illustrate. I'm trying to really emphasize and arpeggiate these subchords, just so you can kind of hear the flavor, the personality I'm trying to target. So, you know, it's a new perspective in looking at how you might, you know, get out of these ruts I talked about earlier. So yeah, let's look at you know, ways of getting. Let's look at going up to the 11th. Let's do let's change this to a minor chord. Let's say we're playing this is a really common chord, minor. You know, minor 11 chord. That's how I'm, you know, it's kind of like pentatonic with a 2. Maybe we can strip some of this away. So if we think about, well, what do we need? What triad is attached to the 11th extension? We've got this. So if we look at that flat 7, we've got a major triad here. That's got its own sound. You know, compared to the that triad there, I'm playing it in an open way here. You know, I'm using the 7, the 9, and the 11, and the root. And limiting my note choices to just those four tones, the root and this powerful, like I said earlier, like triads, they really, like when you start playing triads, the ear recognizes like, oh, that's a sound. It sounds like we're playing an F there. And when you juxtapose it with its parent chord, it's kind of takes on the context. It changes the color of it. But like that's, you know, normally that bass line I just played there, I'm playing the root, the 9, the 11, and the 7. I've just, you know, reordered it from like, that would be, you know, a proper extension, 7, 9, 11. I've just moved the tones around a little bit. But typically you wouldn't come up with, most people wouldn't come up with a bass line that isolates those sounds, you know? There's no 5 in there. There's no minor third in there. We're going root, 7, 4, 2. And they're all okay. They're all fine. They're all like very colorful. Yeah, and we can keep going. You know, the more, you know, this is all just a different lens. We're just taking, you know, chords and like isolating specific regions, like little child sounds inside them, and honing in on them as a way of kind of like putting some borders around, you know, what we're trying to do. And I find, I don't know about you, but sometimes when you're limited, like when you limit yourself with, when you put restrictions on yourself, some constraints on yourself, it can force you to get creative with what you have. You know, so it's kind of like a subtractive thing. And it's just ultimately this is like a perspective kind of thing. And if you're feeling like you're stuck in the same, you know, routines, challenge your try some of these things. Try playing around with the extensions. You're gonna feel uncomfortable as hell at first, but just open your ears to it and let it sink in. You know. You know, that's that I just that could be for a dominant. I'm playing off the 5 here. This minor triad. It's got a sound. It's got a sound that's, it's interesting. Anyways, I hope that if you like this stuff, please subscribe. I just reached 500 subscribers today. I can't tell you how happy I am about that. You know, if you like this stuff, give me some thumbs up. If you have comments or you want me to elaborate on certain areas of it, you know, leave it in the comments. I read it all. Okay, stay cool.